Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Oop, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, it got weird.
And then another thing is I placed an order. I got my order all up so I can get enough points and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
The prices that are on the website is not what they were charging me.
Well, you see what they've done now. They got rid of premium membership. So now your choices are retail or the consult. It's all messed up, and they claim they're trying to streamline it, but that's baloney. And the website's all messed up because today I was on there and it was like forever, and I went through three different people, three or four. I lost track. Three. And it's still messed up.
Yeah, they're just such dips.
I mean, like the whole debacle a couple of years ago with the website, like I lost a lot of people, and then everything that's been happening, I just keep losing people.
I hear you. Me too.
They're horrible. So, well, I hope you wrote them about charging you the wrong amount.
I did. And they said, "Well, give us the tracking number." And I was at work whenever I emailed them as soon as it happened. I copied it,
Mm-hmm.
I screenshotted it, and I pasted an email and I sent it to them. And they said, well, we can't find your order. So if you give us the order number. Well, I just told them I can't give you an order number because I'm not where the order number is. But I only order once a month. It's not like there's 7,000 different orders there, you know?
They're so like they don't try to help at all for anything.
I am believing that big time.
There's so much I'm just so fed up with them for.
You and me both.
But well, I hope you feel better.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I just like to complain.
No, it's not complaining at all.
I don't know if anybody's even coming tonight. We had only 3 people sign up.
Oh well.
And that's not including you nor me, but.
Yeah. Oh, Jackie's here.
All right, Jackie, how you doing? I'm going to be out Jade again tonight, aren't I?
Hey, how are you, Mary? Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi. Good to see you, girl.
You too. We just got to get you an honorary J name.
You know what? Well, an honorary J name. Oh, you mean Mary?
Yeah,
Mary, because she said she was going to be out Jade again.
Come on, Jerry is good. Jary. Jerry is good.
Yeah. If a man gets to change his name to something that he really likes without having to rhyme with his name, I should be able to do the same thing, don't you think? I'm not changing genders or anything. So
there you go.
Jezebel, what do you think?
Ooh.
No.
Does it suit me? Okay, I think so.
Yeah, you like to go for the shock factor.
I do.
Do something exotic.
Jasmine.
I was thinking that. Oh my goodness.
Really?
Yes. I was going to say Jasmine.
Oh, cool. Well, there you go.
Now we just need to find your Aladdin.
No, Aladdin was poor. I want someone rich.
Oh.
He became rich.
Only because he married her.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, somebody marries me, trust me, they're not going to be rich. That doesn't go with the territory.
But you could marry them and be rich.
I'd do that. Yeah, sure. I'd marry for money. I married for love the first 2 times, and they got me nothing but a bunch of bills. So, actually, I got two kids out of it. my first marriage.
Yeah.
I have a client. She says the first time you marry for love, the second time, I forget. Oh, I forget what the second time is, and then the third time you marry for money. So she's on number 3.
Ah,
Well, what did Elizabeth Taylor do? I think she did 7, right?
she got married.
Yeah.
I have a friend whose mother was married 11 times.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Yeah, twice to the same man, 2 times to the same man, but she was married 11 times. So she was married to 9 different men 11 times. Does that make sense?
She found 9 men she wanted to marry. Wow, good for her.
Oh,
But she didn't want to stay married to them, so
Uh,
that
she
was a
had
career.
no. She had her first child when she was 15, and then my friend Bob, her daughter, this lady's daughter, my friend, had a child at no, I'm sorry. Her mother had her at 14, and Bob, my friend, had her first child at 16. So at 30 years old, her mother was a grandma.
wow.
That blows
They
your
come,
mind, doesn't it?
they come young these days.
Yeah. Well, actually, Bobby's this lady. I shouldn't use her name, but she is my age. So this happened way back.
Right.
Wow.
There's a Catherine. All right, Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Now it's 2-2. 2 J's to 2 others. So.
You
All right.
broke the tie, Catherine, because we thought it'd be all J name people today.
Yeah, yeah. They were trying to call me Jerry, Catherine. Can you imagine? Jerry.
Jerry? No, Jerry is good. Yeah, I think Jerry is a nice name.
She's not innocent. She wanted Jezebel as her replacement name, so.
Okay, so we're not going to be total goofballs tonight.
Not totally.
Not as much as usual, perhaps. Okay, so let's get started. The Yeast Beast. That's what I used to call when I used to have yeast really bad under my boobs, under my stomach flap. What they call it, the mother's apron, and my underarm pits. So I know from whence I speak. Yeast sucks. Oops, here's our disclaimer. Let me make sure we're recording this. We are. Okay. And so women or men get yeast most typically where it's moist. The yeast is out of control in their stomach and in their bloodstream, but it comes out where it's moist. Yeast is really hard to get rid of because it is natural to have yeast in your body. Yeast is supposed to be in your body. That's why they don't just say you have yeast, they'll say you have yeast overgrowth, because everyone has yeast. It's the overgrowth that causes the problem. Okay, so like under a woman's breast, and usually it burns and it hurts. This is a man. I don't think this is a man that came to me. I can't even remember where I get these pictures, but this is a man's foot, and look how thick his toenails are. That's yeast of the toenails. Doctors say it's a fungus. Well, yeast is a fungus. There's a gentleman that came to me that had taken stuff for his athlete's feet, thick toenails, fungus, whatever you want to call it, and I suggested some herbs. He was really bad. I suggested some herbs, and they came in about 3 days, and his wife brought them to me. She said, "Here, you can have these." I said, "Isn't he going to try doing it?" She said, "He passed away from the medication to get rid of ugly toenails." Quite frankly, between you and me, I'd rather have ugly toenails than to kill my liver. But that's how thick it is. Some people have to soak their feet and cut it with a razor blade and all kind of craziness. I work with elderly people. And well, we're not allowed to cut their nails anyhow because if they get infected, we can get sued. But they'll come and yeah, see some of these toenails. They're thick and discolored. Some are yellowish, some are like brownish. Yep. Sorry, come on. My mouse is not working properly. Here's another one. That's yeast too. Then she had a little with athlete's feet, where her feet got really itchy. It also often comes out in the underarm pits, especially if you stop using antiperspirants. I had a little bit under my boobs and underneath my stomach, but when I stopped using antiperspirant deodorants, oh my goodness, I should have taken pictures. I didn't know about doing this kind of crap then. I was going to give lessons on or anything, but it got galled. My underarm pits were I was in so much pain, and I found out that this is before I knew a whole lot about natural health, but I read an article, actually I read a book, I can't remember what it's called, The Yeast Connection or something like that, and it says the moisture is what allows that to grow. So what I did is I took maxi pads, or actually always pads, and I put it in my underarm pit and then brought my shirt up to keep it close, and I wear tight shirts to keep it close, and that pulled the moisture away, and that was the only thing that worked. I tried things the doctor gave me because I was still kind of doctorish. I mean, this is really 34 years ago. I tried stuff people would tell me to do, and nothing worked, but that did. That got rid of it. This is a lady that came to me, and my heart just broke for her. It was in her ears, on her face, on her back. It was on her chest too, but she wouldn't let us take a picture of that, which I understand. But you should have seen the chest was, oh, it looked worse, actually. But this is all from yeast. She had a vaginal yeast infection, and she went to the doctor, and you'll never guess what the doctor gave her. Think the absolute worst thing you can give someone with a yeast infection. Anybody?
Mushrooms?
Nope. He gave her antibiotics for her yeast infection. And it went away. And as soon as she went off the antibiotics, a couple weeks later, it came back. So she went to the doctors, and he put her on stronger antibiotics for a longer dose. And after doing that several times, she couldn't remember how many. This is what her yeast ended up being, coming out through her skin. The dumbest thing you can take for anything that's not a bacterial infection is an antibiotic. It makes yeast grow crazy. It makes viruses have an ability to grow out of control. Can you imagine that? And by the way, she got rid of all this. All right. There was studies done with twins, identical twins. And they like to do identical twins because your genetics are the closest to anybody else to your twin. And the one they gave stuff, gut microbiome, which is basically fermented stuff, like probiotics and stuff like that. They gave it to the one twin, and that twin lost a lot of weight, and I think she even looks younger than this twin. This twin did not. They did it to rats, too, with the same thing. They found out that the more good bacteria you have in your intestines, typically the leaner the body. Okay. So first let's talk about what causes yeast overgrowth. Then we will see what to do for it. Okay? The number one thing is taking antibiotics. Antibiotics kill bacteria. In your intestines are bacteria. The bacteria eats the yeast. So it's like back where I used to live, they had a lot of coyotes. And I'm sorry, a lot of deer. And people were running into them. Insurance companies took a bunch of coyotes and they put them in the woods of Pennsylvania, although you don't usually have coyotes in Pennsylvania. But they did that because they knew the coyotes like to eat deer. And it cut down the deer population. Then they ended up having problems with coyotes. They were coming in and killing people's dogs and stuff like that. But so the probiotics are like the coyotes. They kill the yeast. They consume the yeast. They consume it, then they excrete B vitamins. Probably the first place that people have a problem with yeast is whenever a baby's born, as it goes through the vaginal canal, it swallows some of the yeast that's in the vaginal canal. Then, the reason why the baby's digestive system is so underdeveloped, so immature, they can't eat like pureed food or juice or anything, because it allows the good probiotics from the mother's milk to get into the intestines. If the hydrochloric acid was higher and the digestive system was high enough, it would kill off a lot of the bacterium. So this is really important. If when possible, and of course it's not always possible, when possible, have your baby born naturally. There are things that can be done, and doctors are starting to do that a little bit. I saw 2 videos now where when a baby is born breech or is in a breech presentation, the doctors will turn the baby while still in the womb so the mother can have the baby naturally. So they're starting to do that, although midwives have done that for years. And they're starting to get a little bit better with breastfeeding too. Whenever I had my daughter, the doctor just said, here's your baby. And I said, well, I'd like to breastfeed. And they said, well, go ahead. I said, how do you do it? And they said, well, just stick your boob in her mouth. And I did. And I let her nurse like a half hour on the one breast, and I didn't do it right. I ended up getting really, really sore. And the doctor says, I don't know why you want to do this anyhow, because you can't tell how much the baby eats. The baby could starve to death and you wouldn't even know it. Well, now doctors are starting to foster people breastfeeding, encouraging the mothers to do so. Little boys are more likely to have yeast problems in the head of their penis if they're not circumcised, and they're also more likely to spread HPV and yeast if they're not circumcised. Eating commercial raised meats, these animals now, they pump them so full of chemicals and antibiotics, and the antibiotics are in the flesh, so whenever we eat the animals, we eat some of those antibiotics. Especially packaged meats. Did you ever see bologna, like Oscar Mayer bologna, and there's like a liquid in there? Anybody ever see that? It's like in a plastic container and you separate it, but inside is these bologna slices and some fluid, like off-color fluid. That fluid is antibiotics. The FDA allows them to soak this meat that you're going to eat in antibiotics so parasites don't grow as quickly. They put in some canned foods. Whenever I taught a class one time, I told the teacher, I said, you never believe what gives me a yeast infection. I love them, but I can't eat it. And he suggested a couple stuff. And then I said, nope, none of those. He says, canned green beans. I said, how did you figure that out? He said, because they put antibiotics in the water that surrounds the green beans so botulism doesn't develop, which is a different bacteria. So it soaks into the beans. When you eat the beans, you get the antibiotics. And then as a nation, we eat too many sugars, too much bread, noodles, and foods that contain simple sugars. So all of these can get the yeast to grow really fast. Has anybody ever made homemade bread?
Yes, I have. Yep,
Okay.
a couple people have.
So you put the yeast and the water together and nothing happens, right? What do you have to add to it to make the yeast go?
Sugar.
Absolutely sugar. Because yeast eats sugar. So the more of these foods that you eat, the more food for the yeast. So it develops more and more and more and more. Okay, any questions about any of this?
Yes, someone's asking if it's only found in beans.
I don't know. The guy, I think it was Robert Cleary that did it. He told me, he said, it's found in, we guessed green beans, and he said that's because it was found in green beans. But I didn't ask him about other canned foods, so I'm not sure. But I imagine anything that you'd have to cook, like tomatoes, whenever you can. Anybody can here? When you can tomatoes, you really don't have to pressure cook them. If you cook them hot or like a sauce, and you put them in clean jars and put the lid on, it'll seal without having to put a pressure cooker. I would assume any foods that you'd have to put in a pressure cooker could have botulism. That's probably what they put the antibiotics in, but I'm not sure. Sorry, never looked it up. Okay, good question though. So there's 6 major steps. Well, actually 5 steps, and then the 6th step is not to get reinfected. Steps to get rid of yeast. First, you starve them out. Any idea how you starve them out? What are the, yep, sugar. Cut out the sugar, the bread, the noodles. Anything that has simple sugars in it. Absolutely. Then you add the natural predator, which is good probiotics. Fermented foods and probiotics. Fermented foods are better. We have a class on fermented foods. Typically, probiotics have between 1 and 11 different strains of probiotics, while fermented foods can have 50 or 100. Even kefir has 12. At least the kefir I get has 12 bacillus strains. So fermented foods is even better than probiotics. But for some reason you can't have fermented foods, then you could do the probiotics. And you want as many different kinds of probiotics as possible, because each bacillus does a different thing for your body. You could take acidophilus, like 20 million acidophilus, and it wouldn't work as good as 2 million of this and 2 million of another and 2 million of another, because they do different jobs. They help digest, they eat yeast, they do different things. After adding the natural predator and starving them out, add caprylic acid. Caprylic acid is a constituent that's found in coconut oil. So if you wanted to, you could just eat coconut oil. I went to an herb convention, and they had live blood analysis. So they sucked out some blood to people. They put it under this big microscope. They put it on the screen. Then they did different things with your blood. And the one person, they said, "Look at this. This is yeast. This is all yeast." And the person says, "Oh, you know it. I have all kind of yeast problems." Then they put caprylic acid in, and you can see the caprylic acid suffocate or swallow the yeast in the bloodstream. So, although fermented foods are really needed for the intestines, once it gets in the bloodstream, it's escaped that, you may have to go to caprylic acid. And you can get it isolated if you don't like me. I don't like coconut oil. I mean, I like to use it. I like what it does. I do it topically. I don't like the taste of it. Some people would just take a tablespoon and eat it. Ugh. I can't do that. So whenever I took mine, I took them in capsules. Then you work on your immune system, because your immune system also tries to keep yeast in check. Nature Sunshine came out with something called yeast fungal. That's all right. Don't go mega dosing on it. You know me, I rarely do the amount that's on the bottle. I usually do much, much more than what they suggest in the bottle. Like the God tells you to take, I'm trying to see. Okay, cat's claw tells you to take one a day. Yeah, I think it's one a day. I slowly have gone up to 10 a day. So I rarely, but for yeast fungal, it's very important that you don't megadose on it. Because when the yeast dies off, it produces a toxin. And if you kill your yeast off too quickly, it can cause an autoimmune response. The body's immune system will try to attack that, but not in a good way. It would just start attacking things. So I would not go more, take longer and take less of the yeast fungal. Also, make sure your pH is normal. The pH can affect whether or not yeast can go wild or not in your body. So it's best to try to keep that balance for that and so many, many reasons. Okay. And then don't get reinfected. So we're going to take these separately. Starve it out. These are the foods that you do not want to eat. Potatoes, corn, beans, even raw carrots, raw beets, because there's a lot of sugar in them. But do eat foods like broccoli, cauliflower, cucumbers, lettuce, tomato, low carb foods are good for you. Stay away from commercially raised meats. Plus, a lot of nuts have yeast in them. And actually, dairy does as well. Dairy has a lot of casein, which is a type of sugar. Places for yeast control foods be the fermented foods. Lately, I've been doing kefir because I've been so busy. I haven't had time to make. It takes probably about an hour and a half to make fermented foods, but I do enough usually for about 2 months. but I just don't take the time. So I've been doing kefir, and I do vinegar with the mother in it. The unpasteurized vinegar with the mother for my bacterium.
There's some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yep. I was
Okay.
wondering.
First, when it comes to fermented foods, are options like sauerkraut or kimchi better than liquid probiotics such as probiotic yogurt drinks, water kefir, etc., or are they equal?
The probiotic yogurt drinks, the ones that I checked into, I mean, they have so much stuff now, who knows, is a prebiotic. It's not a probiotic. So it's the food for the bacillus rather than the bacillus. The fermented foods and the kefir, in my eyesight, would be more preferred. Glad you asked.
And next question, can you do both caprylic acid and coconut oil? And if you don't have caprylic acid, but you do have coconut oil, how much oil would you take?
Yes, you can take caprylic acid and coconut oil. I wouldn't do more than, I don't know what, 2 tablespoons of coconut oil a day. And it's not because the yeast die off. It's mostly because the caprylic acid in it kind of suffocates it so it doesn't float around in your body. But it's because it can put stress on your liver. You don't want to end up with a fatty liver because you want to get rid of yeast. I would also make sure I eat it with a protein, like eggs or something like that. Meat. Someone says, oh, fry your eggs in it. It's delicious. Anybody do that? Because I think it's gross. Coconut flavored eggs are just not my thing. But I'm glad you asked. Another good question. And sauerkraut that is unpasteurized is fine. The stupid thing is they will ferment foods. You got to be really sure it says unpasteurized. They will ferment foods, then they pasteurize it. They raise the heat till they kill all the bacteria out. But people say, sauerkraut's good for you. I'm going to eat some sauerkraut. And it'll be pasteurized. It's like dead sauerkraut. There's nothing in it. No bacteria in it. But be careful. There's so many ripoffs now. Okay, was there any other questions?
Nope. Someone just commented that homemade sauerkraut is best.
It is good. And whenever you make it yourself, you can decide how much salt you put in it. Because the ones you get commercially, a lot of times they put a huge amount of salt. Any other questions?
No, I just listed some places that you can find antibiotics, such as tap water, produce, some honey, farm-raised fish, dairy, meat you talked about, and then poultry.
Oh, cool. Will you send me that list? Email it to me later?
Yes, ma'am.
And the honey, is it because they put, why would it be in honey?
Honey, because some beekeepers use antibiotics in their hives, and then the residue gets into the honey.
That's nuts. They're crazy. Because honeys are antibacterial normally, but it shouldn't affect your yeast unless you eat like, gobs of honey every day. Okay. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, you're welcome. I think I read somewhere, I believe it's 80% of all antibiotics are used in farming, not for people. So even when you try, I had this happen with a client where, they tried to eat clean, but they weren't taking antibiotics, but it was in the meat and in the foods that they were
Mhm.
eating.
Yep. Yeah, just like me, when I first started out, I was on a total yeast-free diet. But I kept on getting yeast infections from green beans. I mean, who in their right mind would think of putting antibiotics in green beans? I mean, if you get it frozen, it's not in those, but the canned, commercially canned, they put all kind of antibiotics in there. So thank you for that list. I should have done that, but I will if we do this again. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
That is it for now.
And I had no idea the beekeepers put honey in the hives.
Neither did I. You got to kind of track down all your food and find out how it's produced.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Huh. Okay. The yeast fungal we talked about, but there's other things too. There's something called Pardiarco and yarrow. But Pardiarco is really quite good. Nature Sunshine, in case everybody knows, from time to time doesn't have things available to us. That happens way too often. So I've tried Pardiarco, and it doesn't work quite as good as yeast fungal, but Pardiarco, unless you have you're on a blood thinner, you have a hemophiliac where you can bleed to death because Pardiarco slightly thins the blood, you can do a considerable amount of Pardiarco. I don't know why, because the die-off from when you do Pardiarco, my experience hasn't been as bad as when you do the yeast fungal. Okay, so that's just a basis. Then it depends where yeast settles, because it can settle in all different parts of your body. It can settle in the thyroid, it can settle in the kidneys and adrenals, in the lungs, in the brain. If it settles in the mouth and ears, doctors might say you have thrush. Happens a lot with babies. Whenever they open their mouths, you'll see like a little bit of a white coating on their tongue. That's yeast. And then when the baby eats off the mother's nipples will get yeasty, and oh, that's painful too. So what I suggest the mother does, if she's breastfeeding and the baby has yeast, is to put some silver shield gel on the nipple because it's non-toxic, and then sprinkle a little bit probiotic 11 on. Not a lot, because you don't want to overwhelm the poor little baby's intestines with all the bacteria all at once, And then have the mother take fermented foods. And when she nourishes, it will keep the nipples from getting yeasty, and it helps with the thrush. On the feet, fungus and toes, you can soak your feet in the vinegar, the unpasteurized vinegar with the mother. And at one time you could only do it, what was it called? Brox? Not Brox. I can't think. Brax? Brax. Is there a Brax vinegar?
Brags.
Oh, Bragg's. There you go. Thank you,
Yeah.
Bragg's. Duh. Okay, Bragg's vinegar used to be the only vinegar out there that did not pasteurize their vinegar after they make it. But now, a lot of companies do. And by the way, making your own vinegar is extremely easy. All you do is you take a bunch of apples, you cut them up in small pieces whole, you put them in a crock pot or in a crock of some sort. I use a crock pot because it didn't work anymore. You don't heat it, so you can get one of those crocks you put sauerkraut in, and you put water in, and you just let it ferment. Very, very easy. It can be in the organs or glands. So if it's in the feet, I would soak it in that Bragg's or a different, cheaper, unpasteurized vinegar. And then you take a plastic pot scrubber and you soak your feet in this warm water, with it, with half vinegar, half water, and then you scrub all the loose skin and stuff off, and then you soak it again, and you scrub it off again, and you soak it again, and then you take your feet out and just let them air dry. Let that vinegar air dry on there. Some people might put on tea tree oil, but a lot of people don't need to. I gotta tell you something funny that happened. There's this one guy that came, this is again before I knew a lot of stuff, and he said, I finally got rid of my athlete's feet, my toe fungus. I said, how'd you do it? And he said, well, I'm a farm boy. And he says, I went out and I followed a cow, and as soon as the cow pooped, I hurried up and took off my shoes and socks and I stepped in it. And I stood in it until it wasn't warm anymore. I don't know, I'd almost rather have no nail fungus. But that's what he did. And he said he got rid of it. Well, you know, I don't know if the cow ferments it or if it comes to pH from the stomach digestion. I don't know, but that worked for him. I don't suggest that, though. I don't endorse that. Okay, so if it's in a certain gland, let's say it's in the adrenal glands, then what you would do is you would nourish the adrenals. B5, panthic acid, chromium, things like that. If it's in the kidney, then I would nourish the kidney. If it's in the brain, I would suggest adding L-glutamine, which pulls things out of the brain, and frankincense, so it goes past the blood-brain barrier. Then, of course, do all the other 5 things we talked about first. Do these first, or with it, and then add this. If it's on the skin, you can put Party-Arco lotion or coconut oil. I kind of like the Party-Arco lotion topically even better because coconut oil keeps the moisture in a little bit longer. So this is topically. And then again, you can put tea tree oil. Folds of the skin, like, was it in here that somebody had yeasty belly button? They were going to cut their belly button out. Was that in the last class that we had?
You talked about it, but I don't know who that was. I think it's someone separate.
Oh, okay. Well, anyhow, I told them just to put toilet paper in the belly button and to contact me in 3 days if it didn't work. Well, they never contact me back. And I've told people before to do that, and they just, if they have an innie, they just put toilet paper in there and they change it like 6 times a day. Usually, like every time you have to pee or go to the bathroom, you just take it out, throw it away, put some new in there, and keep it really dry, and usually the yeast just goes away. But they were going to cut out her belly button because they tried powders and they tried all kind of stuff and nothing worked. Vagina, you can douche with vinegar. If you get what they call vulvulitis, no, not vulvulitis. You can get yeast of the vulva, and you can put shove toilet paper up in there, and keep it dry. That helps too. Or you can douche with vinegar and black walnut hulls. Or you can get plain yogurt. Do not get the strawberry and banana yogurt. I had somebody do that. They said it got rid of my yeast infection, but whenever the doctor checked me, he said that he found a seed, and I never thought of saying use plain yogurt. But make sure you use plain yogurt. You can get it in your sinuses. There's a lady came to me, and the doctor told her she had a brain tumor. And I said, I don't see a brain tumor, but, the eyes doesn't show everything. But, man, your yeast is just crazy out of control. Well, whenever they operated on her to take that brain tumor out, they found it was just a pocket of yeast. So whenever you get yeast in your sinuses as well, just put Silver Shield in a neti pot, make sure it's a brand new neti pot, or you rinse it and clean it really good, because any salt that's left in that neti pot will negate the effectiveness of the Silver Shield. Does everybody know what a neti pot is? I guess I should ask that, huh? Anybody? Nobody? You still with me, Joanne?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay, people are saying yes now.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure you didn't leave me. Don't leave me, Joanne. All right. And then what you got to do later on is to make sure that you don't get reinfested. So yeast can be sexually transmitted back and forth between husband and wife, or who knows, significant other, whatever you want to, whoever. But it can go back and forth. So if a woman works on her yeast, but the man doesn't, then if she has sex, unprotected sex, she can get yeast. So what I do is every time I'm invited to a wedding, I buy Silver Shield gel and I give it to the woman. Put a little note saying this helps with preventing a honeymoon rash, which is basically a yeast infection. So they use that as a lubricant, and the Silver Shield kills the yeast. So it's not transmitted back and forth as easily. It still can be, but it helps a lot. Also, if you've had yeast infections before, you should iron your underwear. The white pad, cotton pad that is supposed to be in underwear now. Back in the old days, like 1,000 years ago when I was young, and actually fit into a sleeky underwear. Some of them were just silk. They didn't have those little cotton inserts, but that cotton sewn into crotch. But they had to, because people were getting a lot of yeast infections. Well, if you take an iron, you shouldn't iron silk because it would go, but you can iron the cotton part. Or even wear a little mini pad if you're getting a yeast infection. You know, like a, what do they call, shields?
Panty liners.
Oh, there you go, panty liners. Wear little panty liners to keep it from infesting your underwear, because you can get it back out from your underwear too, even if you wash it. Okay, so symptoms of yeast in the brain: fatigue, especially mental fatigue, muddled thinking, headaches, dizziness. It's not the only cause of this. I mean, there's other things that cause fatigue too, but think about it if you have these symptoms. If it's in the uterus, it can cause menstrual irregularities. It can also, if it's in the thyroid. It can be in your joints, cause muscle pain, heart arrhythmia, cystitis, which is in the bladder, and sluggish function, I'm not sure what. Any gland. If it's in the pituitary gland, it can make the pituitary gland sluggish, the adrenals, whatever. To test whether or not, this is a home test, whether or not you have yeast, if you get a clear glass or clear jar, fill it up with water, just regular water, and spit in it. Your spit should just kind of, you shouldn't be able to tell where your spit was. But if you see this, things that look like jellyfish with the little dingly thingies hanging, or if it's suspended like a cloud, or if it sinks to the bottom, that indicates you have yeast. And not vaginal yeast, but yeast in the bloodstream. Okay. Yeast shows in the iris of the eye, the only place that I know of that it shows is in the intestines. It may show other places, I don't know. But if you have yeast in a pituitary gland, or if you just have a little weakness in the pituitary gland, I don't know how to tell the difference between the two. I can just see there's something funky with your pituitary gland. But I can tell yeast in the intestines. So the intestines are around the pupil in both eyes, right? So, let's show this one. Do you see, if you were a little ant and you walk from the outside of the iris clean to the pupil, it would be a straight line. But this one, you would have to take a step down right here. See how that looks like it's sunken in a little bit? Does everybody see that? Please, everybody answer yes or no, because I want you to really know.
Yes, people are saying yes.
Good. That one doesn't, you don't step down. This one you do. See how it steps down again? This one, it's not. This one is really hard. It's very slight, but you can tell it's sunken in just a little wee bit. This one, if you don't get, I wouldn't feel bad because a lot of people wouldn't get that one. It's very, very subtle. So you can look in your iris and see where if you have yeast out of control. And the sclera of the eye is a little bit better. If you have a blood vessel that has like a dot at the end, sorry. You know, have you ever use a felt pencil or felt pen and you draw, and if you leave it there too long, you have like a dot that develops? That's what, yeast looks like in the sclera of the eye. At the end of a blood vessel, you see this little dot. So if it's here, it'd be the sinuses. If it's here, it might be the liver. It could be bowel, but you can't have it in your bowel and not show. This is if it's escaped the bowel for both eyes. So, see these little dots at the end of the blood vessel? So this would be the brain. This would be like towards the ear. Actually, this one would be kind of towards the ear too. Yeah. This would probably be in the thyroid. Or maybe even in the throat. So this one's a little more accurate. Does everybody see the dots that I'm talking about? Sorry, go ahead.
They're saying yes.
Okay, good. And it's really quite common to have these yeast. I would say, and I'm very conservative whenever I say stuff like this, I would say 2 out of 10 people. What do you think, Joanne?
Just about everyone I encounter. It's very rare for me to see someone who doesn't have anything.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, somewhere between 2 and 10 then, out of 10 people. Nature Sunshine came up with these little health in a box. Most of them are garbage. This one's not too bad. It has Partiarco, caprylic acid, and yeast fungal. That's a pretty decent one. Oh, by the way, yeah, garlic helps a little bit with yeast too. But I do not suggest that you douche with garlic. I've had a couple people, whenever they say, "Oh, you have yeast," I know, but I'm not going to get rid of it. That garlic just burnt me, and I was in pain. So I would not do that. I've never tried it. I can't say I know from experience, but I had very negative reactions of people that thought that I was going to tell them to douche with water with garlic oil in it, or garlic. It's a short one, but yeast is pretty important. And like I said, don't forget that yeast has good benefits for it. It helps our body produce B vitamins. If you have enough probiotics, you probably wouldn't need B vitamins. Even if you're a vegetarian. A cow are vegetarians. They don't eat meat, but they have good, they're supposed to have good probiotics in there, or good bacteria in their intestines, and that produces the B12.
There's some questions.
Okay, hit me with them, baby.
Is it yeast in the mother's diet that causes colicky babies, or is it only dairy?
What causes colic in a baby is poor immature digestion. And what makes it even worse is if the mother eats like chocolate or garlic or onions or broccoli or cauliflower, because those are really hard to digest, even if it's in milk. So the baby can get colic because of that. If the mother has enough probiotics, it will make it less likely that the child will have colic. But even if a mother has good probiotics, if she eats garlic or broccoli or something like that, the baby could still get colic. So it contributes to, but it's not the only cause of. Does that make sense? I don't know why anybody asks me questions, because I take so long to answer.
And someone's asking, how would you know if you have enough B vitamins?
You will feel happy. You won't jiggle your leg or tap pencils and stuff like that. You will dream every night. You will, your eyes will not be sensitive to light. That's a sign that you have close to enough. Typically, if it comes from the good bacteria eating the yeast, typically you cannot overdose on B vitamins. You can if you get isolated B vitamins, but if your body's going to produce the B vitamins, I've never heard of anybody overdosing and having neurological problems because of too many good bacteria. And trust me, I looked for that because I wanted to make sure that I never suggest anything to hurt people. And I couldn't find anything. There's a really good book called the How to Herb Book. And Joanne, since you're keeping a running total what we should do for the podcast, maybe we should take a vitamin and talk about how you get it naturally, what symptoms of a deficiency are and what they're good for and stuff like that. What do you think?
I love that idea. I'm adding it to the list.
Okay, vitamins and maybe also minerals. I always wanted to do that to my website, but I just never got to it.
Someone made a comment that they get vaginal yeast infections, so they found that they can't wash with soap, even natural soap, so they just use water and then a special detergent for their clothes.
Okay, well that would indicate to me then, well you get yeast if you use soap, or you just get sore if you use soap. Because those membranes down there are very sensitive. So you could just have problem with the soap irritating those membranes and it not be yeast. So do you know for a fact it's a yeast infection? Or you just get sore? Sorry to get so personal here, but
She can't see, but it's very raw and sore.
okay. So what I would do is this. I would first, this is going to be gross, I would get almost pure yogurt and insert it. They have a thing that you feed people. They can't eat on their own. It looks like a huge syringe, but it's not, there's no needle at the end. And I would insert as much as I could in there and kind of pack it in there. Do that for 2 or 3 days until there's no soreness at all, and try a little bit of soap. Not a lot, but if you start noticing you're getting a little bit sore, stop right away and realize that it's not yeast. It's just you're sensitive to the membranes. The membranes are sensitive. And when that happens, usually it's because you're lacking either natural sodium or vitamin A and D. Because I've had people that have had that. So, also, if you are married and have sex, check your husband for yeast. Send pictures of your eyes and we can look and see if you have yeast overgrowth. Send it to my email, which would be much quicker than if you would send it to Joanne's email.
By the time you write mine out, the yeast will have overgrown even more.
I know. There's no stopping it then. Do you realize your email is almost twice as long as mine? Okay, any other questions?
That is it.
Okay, what's next week?
Next week is. Give me 1 second. Gotta find my planner. Next week is depression.
Okay. Which one of the causes of depression, not the most common, but one cause can be yeast in the brain. But we're going to talk about a lot of other stuff that's more common than that. All right, are there any other questions, comments, concerns?
That is it. I just would add that to what you were saying. If you have a partner, it's so important for you both to work on the yeast, because if not, it's just going to keep going back and forth and you'll never be rid of it completely.
Right. And you know what? You never will get rid of it completely because yeast is found naturally in the body.
Well, overgrowth, I mean.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, that's why, because if the body sees a little bit of yeast, it doesn't automatically try to take care of it because you're supposed to have some yeast. But you're right. You'll never get it under control as long as unless both of you work on it. Well, Joanne, thank you so much for all that you do.
My pleasure.
And you know what? Saturday, would you be able to get together to talk about the podcast?
Sure.
Okay. I have 4 days off. I have Friday off because I'm going to go do a lecture.
Nice.
So please say a prayer that something happens with that lecture. Then I have Saturday and Sunday off, and then Monday off. I think the lady that I take care of is going to go to the hospital for a checkup. So I have 4 days off. I don't know what to do with myself. Woo! So if you need any eyes or anything, Joanne, let me know. This next 4 days are going to be, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday will be good.
Awesome. Well, Either way, I hope you get to enjoy it. There's a quick question. Does the spit test pick up on the body's natural yeast as well?
My understanding is it shows yeast overgrowth that's in the bloodstream because you're supposed to have yeast in your intestines. You're supposed to have some yeast in the vaginal canal, but you're not supposed to have yeast in your blood. You're not supposed to have yeast in your saliva. So my understanding, even, is that if it won't pick up the natural yeast, just the overgrowth once it's escaped the intestines. Very good question. There's a lot of good questions tonight. I like people to think. Are there any other ones?
That's it. Everyone's saying thank you.
Okay. Well, you all take care and thank you for coming. And again, Joanne, thank you. I'll talk to you Saturday, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Good
All right.
night, everyone.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.